Hello and welcome to a new edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where today we're going to take a look at a Super Fiendish Sudoku from the Times. These are probably the hardest daily Sudoku puzzles you'll find in the national press in Britain. And I want to talk a bit about technique when it comes to these puzzles, because they come down an awful lot to technique. When I first started to do Sudoku, I used to note in every single box, all the possibilities, and then gradually cross out, the possibles, and try and hone in on a solution that way. That gets you there most of the time, but it's not the most efficient way to do them. The superb Sudoku solver David McNeil, who has represented the UK many times in the World Sudoku Championship, he employs a method where within each 3x3 box he only writes notation if that box can only contain two numbers. So he tries to fill the grid in that way, making little notes to indicate when a single cell can only contain two numbers. And he goes on like that. That's also slightly unusual in terms of technique. And the technique I'm going to talk to you today about is one that was shown to me by Thomas Snyder, the former World Sudoku champion, who is an absolutely exceptional solver of these puzzles. His technique is that within each 3x3 box he only writes in notation if a number can only appear in two of the cells of that box. So let's actually just start solving this puzzle using that method. So I'm still getting used to the software a bit, but for example we can see that 1 can only appear in 2 of the cells of this box here, so I'm going to fill that in. So let's, I'm just going to go through and do this now. I'm going to pause the video because there's no need for you to watch the sort of donkey work, if you like, and we'll see where we get to. Okay, I've been doing this, and you can see I've basically done the numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4 so far, but I wanted to stop here because the power of this technique, or one of the tricks you can use with this technique, has quickly come to the fore. We can see that in the top middle box and the top right box we've managed to place a 4 in 2 possible cells. But the interesting thing about this is that it immediately tells us something about this top left box. It should be fairly obvious that a 4 cannot appear in the top row or the second row. So we know that the 4 must appear in the third row, and in fact, because we have a 4 and a 4 in column 1 and column 3, we now know that we can actually place the 4 here. We could if I was capable of typing it in. You might be able to hear the rain in the background. There appears to be a monsoon type storm outside, so sorry about that. But anyway, so that's nice, because again that gives us an extra number in row 3. But I'm going to carry on now and go through. In fact, we can see immediately that we're going to be able to place a 5 here, and that's also helpful, because now placing a 5 here, we can limit these 2 cells to 4, 5, and once you have 2 cells that can only be one of 2 numbers, you know they can't be anything else. So we've really given ourselves some help when it comes to this box here and this column 7. Okay, and you quickly reach this point. And now is probably the time that you have to have that little moment of inspiration that you sometimes need in these puzzles. There's probably quicker ways to do this, but one thing that I would encourage you to look at here is row 3, and see if there's anything interesting about that row. And one of the things that your notation might allow you to spot is obviously 1, 3, 5 and 9 the possibles that need to be placed in this row. And this 9 here, the fact that 9 is locked into the upper these two cells in box 1 means it can't appear here. We know there's a 3 here, so we know this is a 1 and a 5. And there's also a 3 and a 9 in column 5, preventing them appearing in this cell. So that means that we know that the 9 must appear at the end of this row. We know this is a 1 or a 5, we know this is a 1 or a 5. My notation doesn't allow us to note that, so we just have to keep that in our heads. And let's now take another look and see if we can do anything further with this box where we're looking to place a 1, 2 and a 6. And we can't, but we know these are 1, 2, 6 in some order. And this fact here actually allows us to go through quite a beautiful chain of logic. At least I find it beautiful, in order to advance further in the puzzle quite neatly. So we've said that we know that this is 1, 2, 6 in some order. If we look at this box here, we can find that there's a 6 here. So we know that this isn't a 6, and in fact that the 6 is locked into these boxes. So if we know that 1, 2, 6, if we know the 6 in the top right hand box is in one of these cells, and we know the 6 in this box is in one of these cells, we know that the 6 in the bottom right hand box is either here or here. Okay, so let's note that. And that, in fact, then shows us, because we have this same alignment of 6s in the bottom center box, we know that the 6 in the bottom left box is either here or here, one of these two positions. And it isn't here, because it isn't in row 1, because we already have a 6 in row 1. So all of that allows us to conclude to place this 6 in the bottom row. And this is again extremely helpful, because now I only have one position in this bottom row here where I can place a 5. That can only appear in this cell, which allows me to place the 1 up here. And lots of notation follows from that. So let's just note that in. And that's looking very nice for this top box here, because that's forcing a 2 to this position, which gives us another whole number down here. I don't think I'm going too quickly here. If I am, just go through the video. I'm not doing anything other than just filling in the obvious consequences of numbers that we've just got. So we know that now. There we are. Now we can continue, just because we've now filled in everything in this row apart from this cell. We know this must be the 5. Okay, 5, 5, which means this must be the 5 from our existing notation. Okay, 6, 7, 9. And we can see here that the 7 is actually locked into this position. So let's fill that in, which forces a 7 here, forces a 6 here. Get rid of that 7, replace it with a 1. 7, 7. 6, 6. 6. Okay. Continue this, just looking at totally forced answers here. I'm not doing it, as I say, nothing clever. The clever bit was the logical step that we found earlier. And very often with these puzzles, once you find that single clever bit, the whole puzzle will fall quite quickly. See, that's got to be a 1, which means that that's got to be a 1, that's got to be a 6, and it looks like we're done here. To be honest, it looks like this, as I said, very often with these they collapse once you find the killer step. We can just fill it in, and that's what I'm going to do. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was interesting. I'll continue and finish it off in a moment, but probably to music, because there's nothing clever that needs to be done from this point forward. The very best in the world, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes on this puzzle, I think. Anyway, I hope this was something a bit different and interesting.